Ma'am, I'm not able to hear you. Ma'am, I'm not able to hear you.
ये go ahead. Now, next is when we talk about the internal regions of the tooth, what we are supposed to understand? The internal regions of the tooth, you are also to understand that there is something known as the pulp cavity. Okay, the internal region of pulp cavity, which is filled up with blood vessels, nerve fibers, and some nutritive substance. So that's the pulp that we talk about. So these are the internal structures of the tooth the other day we studied. Now, after the mouth and the tongue and the teeth, we now go to the next region, and the next region is now known as the esophagus. What is the esophagus? And what are its parts? What are some of the characteristics of the esophagus? Esophagus is a tube-like structure made up of smooth muscles. Esophagus is a tube-like structure made up of smooth muscles to understand. And this esophagus connects which parts? The esophagus actually connects the mouth to the stomach. Connects the mouth and the stomach. And when we are talking about the esophagus, the basic function of the esophagus is the passage of the food. That is one mark question that you're always asked, right? What is the function of the esophagus? Does it show any process of digestion? Never. It does not show any process of digestion. But its only function is the passage of the food. And here, something more that we have to understand is that it also undergoes a particular process known as peristalsis. Now that I already mentioned that it allows a process of passage of food. Passage of food, how? If I have to understand that this is the esophagus, and this esophagus is allowing the passage of the food. Now, if this is the mass of the food which has to move down, the moment it has to move down, what will happen is that this esophagus will show some change in the structure. What happens? Wherever the food is, the esophagus takes a bulge. Wherever the food is, the esophagus takes a bulge. So this food will now start moving with a bulge in the esophagus, and this contracted region, as and when the food is getting pushed, yes, this contracted region, the moment the food has come down here, now it is bulged. So this particular process that is happening, as the food is moving down, the contracted regions are getting bulged and bulged and bulged and bulged, and as and when the food is moving down. So part by part, the entire esophageal tube is getting expanded. But at the region before, what's happening? Now that the food has moved down, what will happen to this region before? The region before is again getting contracted. The region before. So as and when the food passes down, the region forward getting expanded, and the region at the back getting contracted again. So this is what we are talking about, what peristalsis. What is peristalsis? The rhythmic contraction and relaxation, or the continuous contraction and relaxation of the walls of the alimentary canal. That is what is the definition of peristalsis. Please write it down. This definition is very, very important for you. What is the definition of peristalsis? The rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the walls of the alimentary canal. Because now I start talking about the esophagus, but it's not only happening in the esophagus, all throughout it happens. The rhythmic contraction. The rhythmic contraction and relaxation. The rhythmic contraction and relaxation. Rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the walls of alimentary canal. Of the walls of alimentary canal. This is what is called the peristalsis. What is peristalsis? The rhythmic contraction and relaxation of the walls of the alimentary canal. Does the esophagus show any digestion? No process of digestion takes place here. No process of digestion would ever take place in the esophagus. Now, the third part that we are talking about would be the stomach. What are the features of the stomach, functions of the stomach? So as we talk about the stomach is also made up of smooth muscles. Again, to understand, does the stomach also show peristalsis? Yes. The stomach also shows peristalsis. So if I have to write down what about the functions of the stomach, I would write storage of the food for some time, storage of the food, and yes, digestion also. Storage of the food and digestion. That is the function of the stomach to understand. It also undergoes the process of digestion. The stomach also very much undergoes the process of digestion along with storage of the food for some time. Now, again, if I have to talk about the entire stomach like this, say suppose I talk about the stomach this way, and I understand that the inner lining of the stomach has got variety of cells, so many different types of cells are there. The inner lining of the stomach has got so many different types of cells. Maybe I'm talking about one type of cells this way, maybe I'm talking about the other type of cells this way, and then I talk about some type of cells like this, and then I talk about some types of cells like this. So on an average, I know that the inner lining of the stomach has got some 4 different types of cells, and each type of cell secreting something or the other. So now I talk about the, okay, what are these type of cells secreting? These type of cells are secreting a type of a dilute acid known as hydrochloric acid. What about this? These type of cells are releasing a type of a slimy secretion known as the mucus. What about this one? This type of cells are secreting a particular type of an enzyme known as pepsin. Okay, so as per your syllabus, I talk about these 3. These also are there another 4 types of cells that I'm talking about. That is also releasing a type of a hormone. So now I'm going to talk about that. I'm only talking about the major 3 types of cells in the stomach. And what are they releasing? They are releasing one type of cells are releasing hydrochloric acid, another type of cell releasing the mucus, another type of cell releasing what? The enzyme pepsin. Then what do you call this secretion collectively? This secretion collectively is known as the gastric juice. So what does the stomach produce? Gastric juice. What is the enzyme present in it? Pepsin. So now we are going to write down the functions of each of these. So first of all, if I understand that the gastric juice, what is the composition of the gastric juice that you are going to write? What is the composition of the gastric juice? The gastric juice is made up of hydrochloric acid, and then the enzyme pepsin, and then the slimy secretion known as mucus with small amount of water. If I have to talk about what is the role of this hydrochloric acid, let us learn some of those functions. Hydrochloric acid, what does it do? The hydrochloric acid's most important function is activating the pepsinogen to pepsin, activating the pepsinogen to pepsin. Now, what is pepsinogen? Pepsinogen is actually the inactive form of this enzyme pepsin, which is released by the cells actually. But now in the stomach, in our stomach, hydrochloric acid is present, always present in small amounts. By the time you already understand, hydrochloric acid means it's acidic secretion that we are talking about. But it is not as a strong acid as we see in our laboratories actually. This hydrochloric acid, of course, at a pH of somewhere around 1 to 2. But still, this hydrochloric acid is still in a comparatively dilute form when we talk about in the stomach. So this hydrochloric acid is constantly making the pepsinogen get converted to pepsin. Meaning, when I say pepsinogen that the cell produces, is that pepsinogen able to digest any type of foodstuff? No, pepsinogen is an inactive form. तो जब तक ये एक्टिवेट होगा इसका कोई फंक्शन नहीं हो सकता ये दिस इज नॉट केपेबल ऑफ परफॉर्मिंग एनी फंक्शन तो हाइड्रोक्लोरिक मतलब पैक्सिनोजन जैसे कि हमारे बॉडी के सेल से स्टमक सेल से सीक्रेट होने लग जाता है एंड इट कम्स इन कांटेक्ट with the hydrochloric acid it starts getting converted it's an active form. The next part is not needed now right for you. Active form से हमेशा याद रखना है the rest of the chapter also we are going to talk about this. एक particular component secrete hota hai as pepsinogen and gets converted into pepsin and I say that it is the active form. What is the meaning of that? Little bit of a chemical composition or little bit of a chemical change happens, making the chemical secretion active from its inactive state. जो पहले कोई enzyme कोई food को digest नहीं कर पा रहा था, now it can digest certain type of food. Understood? So that much only you have to understand. So activating pepsinogen to pepsin, that's the most important function of hydrochloric acid. What is maintains an acidic medium in the stomach. Maintains an acidic medium. Maintains an acidic medium in the stomach. Maintains an acidic medium in the stomach. What else? It also helps in killing germs, kills germs or bacteria if at all in the food. If at all in the food. So these are some common functions of the hydrochloric acid that you are supposed to write. Now, killing germs and bacteria if at all in the food. कैसे हमारे food में bacteria कैसे आएगा? Yes, it is often possible. Quite a number of times whenever we are consuming food, some germs and bacteria may very much be there. But every time we don't fall sick, we don't suffer from stomach infection, etc. Because एक तो हमारे saliva has the capacity of killing germs. अगर उससे भी नहीं हो रहा, hydrochloric acid gets taken care of. So that it is. Then we are talking about hydrochloric acid. Now let us talk about the role of pepsin. What is the role of pepsin? The role of pepsin is digests proteins. Digests the proteins in the food. Digest the protein nutrient in the food. Digest the protein nutrient in the food. So the protein nutrient has to be digested in the food, and that is the function of the enzyme pepsin. Let us talk about the role of mucus. I write in the role of the mucus here. What is the role of the mucus? Now, see here, I said that this hydrochloric acid can break down chemical molecules. So, ये तो एक acidic secretion है, you understand. Say, suppose I talk about the hydrochloric acid that you have in your chemistry lab also, and I put some on your skin. What will happen? The skin may burn, and then you may see some white patches now developing, and then you may have some burning sensation, etc. तो क्या ये हमारे stomach के अंदर नहीं होता होगा? Yes, it happens quite a number of times when adequate amount of food is not there for a long time. And if and already I said hydrochloric acid is as it is there in the stomach at all times. So sometimes when the food is not there adequate in the stomach, it may very much be possible that the hydrochloric acid starts eroding the inner wall of the stomach. Then agar erode karta bhi hoga inner wall of the stomach, then how can we understand? Yes, we will have some burning sensation in our stomach. Process of digestion will get impaired. But काफी बार we will always come across क्या ये normal है या is it very frequent in people? No, less. I said 1 out of 10 only may be having this condition, or the person may be suffering from such a condition where the hydrochloric acid is actually burning the cells or eroding the cells of the inner wall. So ये normally क्यों नहीं होता लोगों को? Yes, normally नहीं होता because of the role of the mucus. Mucus, जो एक secretion, slimy secretion है, which is always making a layer, or it is actually spreading up in the form of a cover, a film जैसे spread up हो जाता है, and covers up the inner wall of the stomach. And even if hydrochloric acid is there, because of the mucus layer, the hydrochloric acid is not able to destroy the cells so very easily. Yes, if the food is not there adequate in the stomach for a long period of time, then of course the hydrochloric acid may start eroding. So, but again, we may understand under normal conditions, if I take my dinner at 9:30 and the next morning, if I take my breakfast at 9 o'clock again, it's almost a gap of 12 hours. So 12 hours is not a long period where food is not there in the stomach. Yes, 3 hours with the digestion, okay, almost the food is going out of the stomach. So after that, another 9 to 10 hours, no food in the stomach. So tab tak mucus is taking care. So in that period, 7, 8 hours, 9 hours, the mucus is taking care, not allowing the hydrochloric acid to erode the cells of the stomach. But if I don't take food the entire day, I don't take food for 12 hours, 24 hours, 48 hours, and for a longer period, 2, 3 days, 4 days, then what's happening? Then perhaps the mucus will not be able to take care. And at the time, no food, mucus secretion also comparatively lesser at the time, and now the hydrochloric acid will start eroding the walls of the stomach. And this is a condition that we talk about as gastric ulcers that people suffer from. So people who go for long fasts, long duration of fast, improper food habit, they generally suffer from this condition known as gastric ulcer. So what I'm going to write down as a function of mucus prevents the erosion of the stomach wall by hydrochloric acid, or also you can write this way, prevents the stomach wall or protects the stomach wall from the action of hydrochloric acid. Any way you can, right? So prevents the erosion of the stomach wall by hydrochloric acid. So that's the major function of the mucus that we write. We're going to learn the function later. So here, when I talk about the stomach, so first of all, you understand here that what is the role of the stomach and the function of the stomach. Yeah. Now, let us go to the next part, and the next part is the intestine. After the stomach, we are going to talk about the intestine. There are two intestines in our body. One is the small intestine that we are going to talk about, and the large intestine. So first of all, we talk about the small intestine. Now, when we talk about the small intestine, what are the parts of the small intestine we have to understand? The first part of the small intestine is known as the duodenum. The first part of the small intestine, duodenum. That next we have got the jejunum. That's the middle part. I'll show you now. And then next is we have got the ileum. So when we are talking about the small intestine overall, if I talk about some of the features of the small intestine, overall the small intestine is extensively coiled, and overall the small intestine is narrow. And what is the significance of the small intestine being narrow and coiled? The small intestine is narrow and coiled, and also that we should also understand that the length of the small intestine is roughly around 7 meters. And what is the length of the alimentary canal then? This house, so that's something around 9 meters. So when we are talking about the alimentary canal, right, start from the mouth, the entire tube-like structure is 9 meters, and the small intestine itself is just about roughly 7 meters. So it is something around a very long coiled tube in it, the small intestine. So when we are talking about the small intestine, what is the significance that the small intestine has to be so narrow? Why should it be so coiled? So that the food can pass through slowly. What's the significance? If the food is passing through slowly, then only the process of digestion can happen perfectly. It gets enough time. If the small intestine would have been broad and short, like the large intestine, which is roughly around 3 meters, and quite broader, so other small intestine has so that then whatever food we consume all would have been gone as a waste. Digestion का कोई time भी नहीं लेता, digestion का process ही नहीं हो सकता because if it is long and coiled, the food is remaining for a longer time, the food is slow. So the enzymes can remain on the food, break down, and the process of digestion can be completed. So these are some of the points for general features of the small intestine. Now we talk about the duodenum. Duodenum is a major part of the small intestine. When I talk about the duodenum, it is a major part of the small intestine. And this duodenum receives the digestive juices. This duodenum receives the digestive juices of the liver and pancreas both. Receives the digestive juice of the liver and the pancreas both. So this duodenum is a major part of the small intestine where many steps of digestion happen. Why am I saying this? Also in the duodenum, the food as it passes through the duodenum, the food is made alkaline because of the juices coming from the liver also, and the juices coming from the pancreas also. Now have a look at this figure first. When I talk about the duodenum, how does it look like? Okay, now have a look at this. When we talk about, I don't know, if I tilt it, it will start again. Mevan, come here, come this side. Can you see? Ishita, can you see? Acha. So now we are talking about the small intestine, the parts of the small intestine first of all. Let us talk about the parts of the small intestine first of all. So when I'm talking about the parts of the small intestine, when I talk about the parts of the small intestine, see here, this small intestine that I show you, see here, at least give you a fair idea about this. That when I'm talking about the large intestine, the small intestine, okay, this small intestine, let me open the other. Give me a minute. यहाँ से समझ में नहीं आ रहा। दिखाई दे रहा है? Small intestine, this part is the duodenum that I'm talking about. This part is the duodenum, the most important part of the small intestine. Q, because this duodenum receives juices from the pancreas as well as from the liver. So यहाँ पे इतना सारा जो एक छोटा सा जो part है, यहाँ पे many steps of digestion can get completed because of the juices coming from the liver also and from the pancreas, and especially the pancreatic juice has got a whole lot of enzymes for carbohydrate, protein, and fat digestion all. Then I talk about this middle part. This middle part is known as the jejunum. This middle part is known as the jejunum. And then I talk about this part, which is the lower part, which is known as the ileum, which is even more specialized because this ileum that I talk about, look into the cutout portion of the ileum. This ileum is supposed to be something like this. Now, when I talk about this ileum that I showed you here, this ileum, when we cut it in a section, it appears something like this, where the inner wall of the ileum is not smooth. ये जो inner wall of the ileum है, if I draw the inner wall of the duodenum, it should be drawn something like this, just smooth like this. But if I have to draw the inner wall of the ileum, then I should actually draw this way. I should actually draw this way. I should actually draw this way to make you understand that the inner wall of the ileum is not smooth. Rather, it has got a large number of some finger-like projections, numerous, and that is what it is. Now magnify this part, it shows something this way, where the inner wall has got a large number of finger-like projections. What are these finger-like projections called? These finger-like projections are called the villi. These finger-like projections are called the villi. वैसे तो एक villi, if I talk about now, magnify only this is what it is. And हर एक villi में there are large number of these small finger-like projections, and each finger-like projection is actually a single cell, जिसको microvilli कहते हैं.
Ma'am, I'm not able to see that.
You're not able to see the PPT?
No, ma'am.
I shared, no, but one minute. Now you're able to see? Now are you able to see, Anish?
Ma'am, it is loading.
Huh?
Yes, ma'am, now I can see.
Huh. So now what I was telling is that whenever we are talking about the section of the small intestine, the inner wall of the small intestine show that there are numerous folds, finger-like projections. And what are these finger-like projections called? These are called the villi. And every single villus again has got a large number of cells, actually epithelial cells. And if I now magnify one of these epithelial cells, let me just see if I have that figure. If I now magnify one of these epithelial cells, It is something like this. Can you see? I'm talking about one of these. I showed you this figure, no? First of all, where I was showing you what? I was showing you this, that take one of these villas only, cut them in a section. It appears this way, where there are so many epithelial cells. Now magnify a little bit of it, where I want to see how is each of this cell looking like, how each of this cell looks like. So now when I try to see each of this cell looks like this, where every single cell, which is an epithelial cell, has got large number of this brush border known as microvilli. So पहले तो एक villi है. So that is what I am showing you. पहले तो ये वाला villi है, एक single villi है. तो villi के अंदर एक cells है. ये cell को अगर फिर से हम magnify करेंगे, then we will get to see that हर एक cell on the upper surface, they have again large number of brush border. So brush border means nothing but the membranes, no? So यहाँ से एक cell के अंदर कितने सारे membranes, then एक villi के अंदर कितना सारा membrane. So overall, what I'm supposed to understand, what is the significance of the villi and the microvilli to increase the surface area? अब surface area, इतना सारा surface area क्यों चाहिए? Because now that the process of digestion, which is going to get over in the ileum is the last part of the small intestine, जहाँ पे digestion खत्म होगा, and then there will be millions of molecules of the nutrients. Now the nutrients you already know. If I talk about glucose, which is the simplest form of carbohydrate. If I talk about amino acids, the simplest form of proteins. If I talk about fatty acids, the simplest form of fats. So in millions, these molecules are there in the ileum. And more the membrane, jitna sara membrane cover rahega, the molecules can undergo the process of diffusion to come into the blood. So this is what I show you now here, that when I'm talking about this villus, एक single villus, बहुत सारा villi. Now that I talk about this single villus, what does this single villus consist of? Every single villus has got a layer, single layer of epithelial cells, and what? A large number of blood vessels. देखो यहाँ पे blood vessels and some lymph vessels also. So सबसे पहले ये याद रखना है, ये जो lymph vessel है, this will help in the absorption of fats, and ये जो blood vessels है, this will help in the absorption of glucose and amino acids. So absorption मतलब we are going to learn later that ये जो intestine के बाहर, I'm sorry, villi के बाहर मतलब यहाँ पे ये हो गया एक villus. Villus के बाहर वाला space कौन सा है? This space, no, I'm talking about ये वाला empty space. So here actually the process of digestion is happening, and here after digestion is happening, there are millions of molecules of glucose and fatty acids and amino acids, and they are moving across this membrane into the blood. They are moving across this membrane into the lymph. Cross this membrane into the blood, cross this membrane into the lymph. Cross मतलब ये जगह कौन सा? ये वाला space. Am I clear? So this part we are going to learn later also. But as of now, you understand the duodenum. Why is it specialized? Because it receives juices both from the liver and the pancreas. Jejunum वैसे तो कोई special feature नहीं है, but jejunum is only helping in the passage of the food and other different steps of digestion. But comparison में the duodenum and the ileum, they are very, very specialized. Comparison में the duodenum and the ileum, they are very, very specialized. Now the ileum, why specialized? The ileum is specialized because it has got numerous villi and microvilli, which increases the surface area for the process of absorption. Here we will write two questions. Fatapat likho. What is the significance of the small intestine? What is the significance of the small intestine being? What is the significance of the small intestine being extremely coiled? I'm sorry, being narrow and extremely coiled. What is the significance of the small intestine being narrow and extremely coiled? Narrow and extremely
Ma'am,
coiled.
can you repeat? Can you repeat, ma'am?
What is the significance of the small intestine being narrow. What is the significance of the small intestine being narrow and extensively coiled? Answer. The small intestine is narrow.
One second.
The small intestine is narrow and extensively coiled. The small intestine is narrow and extensively coiled, and thus the small intestine is narrow and extensively coiled, and thus helps in
Coiled and
the small intestine is narrow and extensively coiled, and thus helps in the slow passage of food, slow passage of food, and carries out efficient process of digestion. Carries out efficient process of digestion. So the process of digestion also can happen efficiently. Efficient process of digestion. Next question you write. What is the role of the villi? What is the role of villi and microvilli? What is the role of villi and microvilli? Role of villi and microvilli. Answer. The villi, which are finger-like projections, the villi which are finger-like projections, the villi which are finger-like projections on the inner wall of the ileum, on the inner wall of ileum, finger-like projections on the inner wall of ileum, comma, and microvilli are brush borders, present. Microvilli are brush borders present on every epithelial cell, present on every epithelial cell of a villus, present on every epithelial cell of the villus, present on every epithelial cell of the villus, collectively increase the surface area, collectively increase the surface area, collectively increase the surface area, collectively increase the surface area for effective, collectively increase the surface area for effective absorption of nutrients, for effective absorption of nutrients. Okay, so now when you are asked to write down what are the specific functions of the small intestine, roughly I told you that the small intestine has got three important parts, and why the duodenum is so special, why the ileum is so special, and these two topics that we discussed separately. Now, apart from that, you may also be asked questions like this, that write two important functions of the small intestine. And what are you supposed to write? The small intestine, remember, already had written the previous answer that the small intestine helps in the continuous passage of the food. No? So if I have to also talk about that, what would be the function of the small intestine? Functions of the small intestine. What are you supposed to write? Two functions of the small intestine. One is passage of the food. Passage of food. And next is digestion. And third is absorption. So majorly, when we are talking about the two important functions of the small intestine, it is true, you are of course supposed to write down that what are the two important functions of the small intestine. Write down the two important functions of the small intestine. The first one I talked about, passage of food. Next is digestion of the complex nutrients into the simpler forms, and absorption. So these are the functions of the small intestine to understand. Next, you will take down one more question. Write three special features of the ileum. Write three special features of the ileum. Now, here what I'm going to write is three special features of the ileum. Number one, the first feature that we are going to write is try to understand, and then you will write it on your own. What are the features of the ileum right now? You are supposed to understand. Number one, the ileum has got numerous finger-like projections known as villi, which is increasing the surface area. So that's the first part that you write. Number two, what are you supposed to write? In this region, or in the ileum, maximum steps of digestion gets completed. So it is in the ileum where the process of digestion is almost complete. By the time the food reaches the ileum, the process of digestion is complete. Does the process of digestion get carried over to the large intestine? No. By the in the ileum, the process of digestion is complete. So what is the second step you're going to, or second feature you're going to write? In this region, the process of digestion is completed. The complex form getting converted to simplest form. Process of digestion is over. What is the third feature? The third feature of the ileum is helps in the process of absorption. It is also helping in the process of absorption. Ileum also helps in the process of absorption. How does the ileum help in the process of absorption? Because of the presence of the thin layer of epithelial cells that every single villus has. So how is the ileum designed to carry out the process of absorption? The single layer epithelium of the villus. That's a third point that you will write. The single layer epithelium of the villus helps in the process of absorption. So what I told you, the 3 points to write. Number one, characteristics of ileum. What is the importance of the ileum? Number one, contains numerous finger-like projections known as villi. Number two, completes the process of digestion. Number three, the single layer epithelium helps in the process. Single layer epithelium of the villus helps in the process of absorption. Because Ashita, okay? Is it okay? Dan, remember? Can you remember all the 3 points? You go.
Ma'am, I can't see the board.
I've not written on anything on the board. I asked you to write down those 3 points.
Oh,
The same thing on the board. I did not write anything. I asked you just now, I told you 3 points about the idiom to write. Did you understand what to write? What's happening? Right? Squatting down. Why? How do we manage it? You have to get it tied in. First point I said, features about the idiom you are supposed to write. The first point you are supposed to write, idiom has, or the inner word of idiom has numerous villi, which increases the stability. Second point you will write, digestion steps of digestion complete karta hai. That is the second point you are writing. Third point you are writing, the single epithelial layer of the villus helps in the process of absorption. Remember, now that you are going to study absorption in the later part of the chapter, absorption कुछ नहीं, it's a simple diffusion process. तो diffusion के लिए membrane हमेशा thin होना चाहिए. Thick membrane में कभी भी diffusion नहीं हो सकता. So that's the reason you are mentioning that the single layer of epithelium. Now that I talk about अगर villus में 3-layered epithelial cells होता, so was the villus structure good enough to allow the process of absorption? शायद नहीं. Since it has got a single layer of epithelium and blood capillaries का भी single layer of epithelium होता है, that's the reason the food, the nutrient molecules can easily cross the villus and fall into the blood. Diffusion. So now this is all the small intestine that we have to study. Now next is we talk about the large intestine, the fifth part. We talk about the large intestine. What are the parts? What are their functions? Special features, if any. So now that we are talking about the large intestine, remember, some differences with the small intestine would be the large intestine is comparatively shorter. The large intestine is comparatively shorter. The large intestine is comparatively broader. Okay, the large intestine is comparatively shorter and broader. What are the parts of the large intestine? What are the 3 important parts of the large intestine? The 3 important parts of the large intestine. First is known as ceca. The second is known as colon. The third is known as the recta. The 3 parts of the large intestine. I'll show you again the parts of the large intestine. Therefore, and try to understand. So when I talk about the large intestine, come across here that this large intestine that I'm showing you would have parts like this. Therefore, the 3 parts. What are the 3 parts I told you? Cecum. So when I'm talking about the cecum, actually this particular region is actually known as cecum, and then starts the colon. So let me show you in this. Here you will come across. Dekha cecum. Could you see the cecum here? So ye part ko pehle to cecum bolte. This part is actually the cecum, and then this is the ascending colon, the transverse colon, the descending colon. Colon is the longest part of the large intestine. Large intestine ka longest part hai colon. And now that I talk about the cecum, it's a small part. And then associated with the cecum, we come across a small tubular structure there, which is known as the appendix. The vermiform appendix jisko kehte hain. So long time in the evolutionary history, if you go back, this particular region had some storage function, digestive function. But now with the course of evolution, this particular region has lost its function and it's no more a significant part of the digestive system. But maybe in another few decades and few centuries, few generations to go, this particular region may completely get wiped out also from our alimentary canal perhaps. But still now it exists as a small region. Does it have any digestive role, absorptive role, storage role? Nothing. It has got no function. So it is a functionless structure actually. So when you are asked to mention the parts, it is ceca, colon, and the rectum, followed by the anal opening. So this is the large intestine. What are some of the functions of the large intestine? You must write down functions of the large intestine. Again, to understand, the large intestine does not have any digestive role. Peristalsis, what are large intestine? Yes. Yes. Peristalsis is happening all through the alimentary canal. large intestine. What is the meaning of peristalsis? Movement of the food. Movement of the food यहाँ पे भी हो रहा है. So when we are talking about the functions of the large intestine का एक सबसे important function जो है, that is the reabsorption of water. Large intestine majorly helps in reabsorption of water. Now that the food which is passing down from the small intestine to the large intestine is actually in the semi-fluid form, almost liquid form hota hai. So semi-fluid form that I say that now the food which is running down from the ileum to the large intestine, the cecum and the colon, the food is almost in the fluid form. But our body cannot afford to lose so much of water. I say fluid form, meaning you are sometimes to understand. If sometimes one would undergo the process of indigestion of the food, one would undergo some infections like the cholera, diarrhea, dysentery. Then what happens? So much of the water along with the waste substances get released. So that is not normal because the body is losing so much of minerals and water. So every day, if a person goes through that, no, the person will start collapsing. No. So now that we are understanding, the large intestine में क्या हो रहा है? Digestion भी नहीं हो रहा है. Then what? Reabsorption of water. The food which is the digested nutrients are already gone into the blood. So what is coming down from the ileum to the large intestine is now the waste and the water. But the waste only should be released out of the body, and the water should be again given back to blood. The water cannot be released out of the body. So the water moving from the large intestine to the blood, that is what is called reabsorption of water. So our body should retain that water and release the waste with minimal amount of water loss. So reabsorption of water. And what is the second function that you are going to write is formation of the feces. Formation of feces. That means the waste substances to be released out. So ये function देखना है. The large intestine function. What are the functions of the large intestine? These 2 points, right? This is all about the alimentary canal. What does the alimentary canal do? And what are some of its role? What are some of its parts? What are some of its functions? So now that we are talking about the alimentary canal, so what did you learn? What are the major parts of the alimentary canal? We have got the mouth, we have got the esophagus, we have got the small intestine, we have got the stomach, the small intestine, and the large intestine. The next class, we're also going to understand what? The digestive glands. We already mentioned, no? What are the 3 digestive glands? Salivary glands, the liver, the pancreas. ये 3 glands हमें पढ़ना है.
Yes. In the morning, yes. That is a bit over the time there. No, I think so they can do this. They can do 1 hour. But 5 is 10 is like good. I don't know. So they बोलते हैं कि नहीं आओगे बट चुपचाप आना ही पड़ेगा. क्वेश्चन का भी करना है चुपचाप. वो क्या मेरा क्वेश्चन वहाँ जहाँ दे रहा तो क्या बोलते हैं. क्या मैंने कुछ नहीं किए पहले तो उनको देने वालों को अरे देखो क्या पहले पेड़ पे दिखा था तो मैंने खींचा पूरा था फिर बोल रहा था कि के लगा देखो देख रहे समीर पे बैठे हुए तो मैं आया हम तीनों किसी बैठे
तो कैलिब्रेट है ना। चलो